morsels.
That is not the Modo you are looking for. I'll start this morsel with a terrible confession. The transform selected alias that we made in the previous video has a bug. Mea culpa. Guilty me lud. Look at this setup where I am using the transform selected alias twice. Once to manipulate the top of the icosahedron and once to manipulate its bottom. The bottom works fine, but when we try to move the top, it all goes to hell in a handcart. The reason is that both the aliases are using the same selection set name internally. We really need to use unique names for each set that we create. So let's fix it. First, I'll disconnect everything from the alias, then expand it back to an assembly and dive inside. We need to set the selection set name in the general influence and assign selection set nodes to something unique. You can't just drag the name from the Properties tab of the general influence, but you can by using the channel list and dragging the name listed there instead. Do the same for the assign selection set node. We can now set the name to something unique. And one way to obtain these is to use the name of an item using the string constant node. Item names in Modo are always unique. Set the mode to item name and connect the string to the two name inputs. I'm going to use the merge op stack node for the name, so I'll rename it something that is more recognizable, then connect the item to the string constant. We are nearly there. Back up to the workspace, collapse it back into an item selecting our newly renamed meshop stack as the source, and connect everything back up. A quick test reveals that it is all working as expected, so all that remains to do is to save the alias to a file and we are done. So, how about another example of a mesh op stack item alias? I think we need one. The subdivide mesh operation does what it says. It subdivides your mesh. However, if you want to do multiple subdivisions, you have to create multiple instances of the subdivision operation. It's not a huge burden, but wouldn't it be nice if we could just set an iterations count and be done with it? Make it so, Mr. LaForge. Let's stick the subdivision operations into a mesh op stack. You can probably guess where we are going with this. 8 subdivisions is probably plenty to be going on with. Let's disable them all, except for the first one, and create an assembly subdivide n, which will eventually become our new item alias. Move everything except the mesh into the assembly. Our iterations can be controlled by a new integer input channel. Wiring up the assembly involves a lot of repetition, but fortunately Modo has some tools to help. To get all the channels we are interested in into all nodes, first select them all, then click the top channel in the properties list and shift-click the bottom channel to select them all. You can now drag all the channels into the nodes at once. It's hard to see what's going on, so select all the subdivide nodes, then press Ctrl-Shift-Up arrow to space them out. Now we need to expose the channels that will be visible outside the assembly. Control-click to select the channels in the order that you would like to see them, and then use the right-click menu to add them as inputs. Now we want to connect the channels from all the other nodes to the inputs. This would be rather tedious if we had to do it by hand, but fortunately we can connect multiple channels at once. Select the unconnected subdivide nodes, then select a channel in the properties list. Shift, click and drag each channel to its corresponding input. and you'll notice that multiple connections will be made to the channels of each of the nodes. Finally, we need to implement the logic for the assembly. This, after all, is the important bit. We will use a greater than node for each subdivision level and use it to control its enable channel. So the first subdivide will be enabled if the iterations is greater than 0, the second one if the iterations is greater than 1, and so on. Duplicate the greater than node and change the comparison value to 1. Connect the result to the enable for the second subdivision. In the next step, we can save ourselves a bit of effort by duplicating both the existing greater thans. Change their comparison values to 2 and 3 respectively and connect up their enables. Rinse and repeat until all the subdivision mesh-ops are connected. Going back to the workspace, we now need to convert the assembly into an item by specifying that we want a mesh-op stack item and then selecting the mesh-op stack from the assembly. We can then select the item alias and save it as an assembly preset in the File menu. Let's test it out with a fresh mesh. Connect the mesh to the alias and then create some geometry for it to work on. I'll create a flat plane with a cube mesh-op. Select the iterations channel and hit C for the channel haul tool, and hey presto, we have Subdivide with iterations. Vinny and Throttle will be very pleased with Modo.